Star Trek, The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Crossfire, Chapter 1. Scratch! Groaned the feedback from the Andorian hyperblat. Or maybe that was the instrument's natural sound, thought Geordi LaForge. It was hard to tell. The blue-skinned Andorian smiled blissfully, and his antennae bobbed up and down as he played the strange instrument. The hyperblat was half electronics and half tiny bellows, and the Andorian looked as if he was strangling it. Finally, he stopped playing, and Geordi opened his eyes. "It is not in tune," explained the Andorian. "Perhaps another fortnight after the humidity has fallen, it will sound better." "What we really need is a trombone player," said Geordi, trying to let him down gently. "You see, the Starfleet Academy Band is modeled after a dance band from Earth's 20th century. We play jazz, big band, blues, that sort of thing." The Andorian sneered and looked around the barren rehearsal room. "Oh, you don't want any non-Terran instruments." "Not true," said Geordi. "We've got plenty of non-Terran players and instruments, especially on percussion. You can substitute some instruments. But for jazz, you need a trombone, and we lost ours." The Andorian nodded sadly. "So I heard. Odd for a senior, only months away from graduation, to drop out of Starfleet Academy." "It happens," said Lieutenant Commander Amelia Baxter, looking up from her notes. The stern, dark-haired woman was a tactical warfare instructor most of the time. She was also the assistant band director. She looked with pity upon the earnest Andorian. "We're sorry, but the audition notice clearly said trombone players." "I'll get one and learn it," Andorian declared. "Thank you, sir." He picked up his hyperblat and strode out the door. "How many more?" asked Lieutenant Commander Baxter with a weary sigh. Geordi checked his pad, a small handheld computer. "Only one more. What are we going to do if we don't find a trombone? How are we going to play that competition on Pacifica? Reassign the parts or use a synthesizer?" "That's not your problem, Cadet," said Baxter sharply. "You're the roadie. You just keep our equipment running. Besides, didn't you say we had more cadets to audition?" "One more." She waved imperiously. "Bring him in." The first-year cadet hustled out of the rehearsal room into the hallway and looked around. Empty chairs lined the corridor of the arts building. There had been a tall, dark-haired cadet sitting in one of those chairs, but he was gone. Geordi adjusted his visor to make sure it wasn't malfunctioning. No, the chairs were empty. Just his luck. Their last hope had gotten impatient and split. His shoulders slumped. Geordi headed back to the rehearsal room, dreading the look on Commander Baxter's face. Then he heard the titter of a girl's laughter, like a flute, and he followed the sound. Under a stairwell, he found the missing cadet leaning close to a young female cadet. "You're up next," said Geordi. The tall, dark-haired cadet ignored him, but the young woman smiled and backed away. "I have to get to class. See you around." Wait!" called the tall cadet, but the woman was indeed in a hurry. He scowled at Geordi. "You could at least have let me get her name or ask her out." Geordi cleared his throat impatiently. He'd always been shy around girls, so if there was one thing he hated, it was a ladies' man. This character was clearly one, or thought he was. "Come on," he said sharply. "Commander Baxter's waiting." He expected the cadet to be embarrassed, but instead the cheeky fellow whispered in his ear, "What is she like? What should I play for her?" "Just play well and she'll like it." Geordi glanced at the large trombone case in his hand. "At least you have the right instrument." "My name is Will," said the tall cadet. "What's yours?" "Geordi." "Are you in the band?" "Yes, but I'm not a musician." As they strode into the rehearsal room, Geordi checked his pad. "Cadet 4th Class William T. Riker," he announced. Commander Baxter nodded wearily. At ease, cadet. In this room, I'm just the assistant band director. Have you ever auditioned for the Starfleet Academy band before? No, answered Will. Am I supposed to audition before just the two of you? Commander Baxter's back stiffened. Yes. What about Captain Webb? Baxter bristled. I can assure you Captain Webb trusts my judgment, or I wouldn't be second in command. I should also tell you that it's very rare for a first-year cadet to make the band. So I've heard, said Will Riker with a cocky smile. But you haven't heard me play yet. Then let's not delay. The commander motioned toward Geordi. Mr. LaForge will accompany you. What do you wish to play? St. James Infirmary. The cadet glanced puzzledly at Geordi. Where's your piano? Geordi picked up his computer pad. I don't need a piano. My pad is connected by infrared to the sound system in this room, and it's connected to the Academy computer. I can play just about any song, any key, any tempo. I can even pick your sidemen. Excuse me, said Will, but I expected to be playing with live musicians, not some techie on a computer. You're not in the band yet, snapped Geordi. I suggest you play, or you'll never get in the band. Commander Baxter smiled at that comment and looked expectantly at Cadet Riker. You heard him. Geordi is our sound engineer, so he outranks you. The tall cadet shrugged. Okay, you said I could pick my sidemen. Can you give me the Benny Goodman Band, circa 1932? Geordi nodded, tapped in some commands on his pad. Of course. Are you going to play Jack Teagarden's part? I'm going to try, said Will with a grin. Key of A, and swing it, Mr. LaForge. The techie tapped in another command. Set to swing. Will put his lips on the mouthpiece, worked the slide a few times, and blew some warm-up notes. Satisfied, he looked at Geordi, tapped his foot, and counted in time. And a 1, 2, 3, 4. Geordi punched his pad, and Benny Goodman's wailing clarinet led the charge into the low-down, bluesy number. Will lifted his trombone and blew soulfully. Maybe he didn't hit every note that Jack Teagarden hit on St. James Infirmary, but he hit most of them. More importantly, William Riker had the right feel for jazz. He honked a few times and slipped off key, but he never fell behind or lost his way. In fact, Will ended his trombone solo by putting down the horn and singing a few bars. I have no idea what this song sounds like. Oh, I went down to St. James Infirmary, he warbled in a pleasant baritone. I saw my baby there. She was stretched out on a long white table, so sweet, so cold, so fair. Geordi chuckled. Nobody ever said it was a happy song. After singing, Will nodded to Geordi, who brought the band to a rousing climax. The musician blared his final note and looked confidently at Commander Baxter. The techie could see that Baxter was pleasantly surprised. Will wasn't as good as Lachelle, the player they had lost, but he would do. Especially with a major competition coming up, he would have to do. Commander Baxter sighed, trying not to look too relieved. You're a little rough around the edges, but I can see that you've been playing. Will grinned. I'm in, aren't I? Baxter rose to her feet and shook his hand. Yes, cadet, you're in. LaForge will give you the rehearsal and concert schedules and get you the charts. You are free for a trip to Pacifica next week, aren't you? Am I ever, said Will. Don't miss any rehearsals, warned Commander Baxter as she headed out the door. Yes, sir, called Will. Geordi hadn't liked this brash young cadet at first, but anyone who had so much fun playing a trombone couldn't be all bad. He pointed to Will's horn and said, There's an air leak around your bell lock. You'll hit those high notes better after I tighten it. The tall cadet just stared at Geordi, then at his trombone. How'd you know that? Geordi tapped the visor that stretched across his eyes. I can see things you don't see, such as air temperatures and currents. You're a sound engineer. That's great, said Will. Geordi smiled. That's a fancy name for a roadie, and there are 3 of us. I love music and I love machines, so this way I get to be around both of them. Not to mention the extra travel, said Will with a wink. I'm looking forward to Pacifica. They say those beaches are something else. You'll be kept busy, warned Geordi. Hey, that trombone player who quit, Lachelle, is he still on campus? Geordi shrugged. I don't know. Why do you want to know? I want to ask him about his parts, said Will. All the stuff I'll be playing. He'll know the trouble spots, the pieces I'll have to work on. I saw your band play, and he was really good. You wouldn't think a Tellarite could play trombone like that. I suppose, said Geordi, he might still be in his quarters packing up. I'm not so sure that a guy who just quit the academy is going to want visitors. Will grabbed Geordi's arm. Let's go see. In the Antares wing of the dormitory quadrangle, Geordi and Will quickly found the quarters of ex-cadet Lachelle. There were boxes piled in the corridor, and the door was open. As they drew closer, a huge shape filled the doorway. It was the backside of the Tellarite, and he snorted his pig-like snout at their approach. His hands were full of boxes, but he kicked a rear hoof at them. Go away. You can't talk me out of quitting. Easy there, said Will. I'm glad you quit. I'm taking your place in the band. The band? For the first time, the Tellarite turned to look at them. Hey, I don't even know you. You know me, said Geordi, from the band. Oh, hi, said the Tellarite, rubbing his orange hair in confusion. Look, I've got to go. I'm playing your parts, insisted Riker. What are the tough songs in the repertoire? Michelle shrugged. I always had trouble on Mood Indigo. Too slow. Stand back, please. When the hefty Tellarite held out his beefy arms, Will and Geordi had to back off. Geordi glanced at one of Lachelle's boxes and saw a peculiar symbol. It almost looked like the snout of a Tellarite's nose. Do you have to leave right now? Asked Will impatiently. Yes, my ship is waiting. Lachelle pulled a communicator out of his pocket and opened it. Lachelle to the Pacus. My luggage is in the corridor and ready to transport. Geordi and Will jumped back even farther, as sparkling nebulas of light swirled around the boxes. A second later, Lachelle's belongings had vanished in the transporter beams. Will pressed on. Which songs were you worried about for Pacifica? Pacifica? Tellarite said the name of the planet, as if awakened from a dream. Then he snorted and turned to Geordi. You watch your backs on Pacifica. Strange things happen in that part of the galaxy. Sure, said Geordi. We'll be careful. Why are you quitting? Tellarite shook his head, tears filling his black eyes. I didn't want to quit, but you know blood is thicker than mud. Lachelle tapped his communicator. Okay, you've gotten the luggage. Take me now. In a sparkling column of light, the former cadet disappeared from the campus of Starfleet Academy. Will looked at Geordi and shrugged. Those were strange parting words, said Geordi. What could possibly harm us on Pacifica? Will Riker gave him a sly smile. Orion women. Chapter 2. It was a blustery night in San Francisco, and the air smelled like salt and seaweed. It buffeted Geordi as he walked across the commons, a big field in the center of the campus. He turned up the collar of his cadet jacket and stared straight ahead. He was so busy just trying to walk upright that he didn't see the Deltan and the human until they bumped into him from each side. Hey, watch it, said Geordi, skidding to a stop. What's the matter with you guys? Sorry, said the Deltan female, a strapping young lady with a completely bald head. Acosta was one of their two percussionists, and she beat those drums. We want to talk to you before rehearsal. Yeah, said Stinson, a burly trumpet player. About the new trombone. Spill the beans. Rumor has it he's just a baby. Both Stinson and Acosta were upper-class cadets, and they never let the first-year cadets forget it. They weren't exactly bullies, but they enforced the upper-class pecking order in the band. Riker is good, said Geordi. Not as good as Lachelle, but Lachelle is gone. I saw him leave. Unless you've got a trombone player in your hip pocket, I suggest you leave him alone. The competition is next week. I know that, Frosh, snarled Stinson. He had a buzz haircut, which sometimes made him and Akusta look alike. But we don't want a crybaby who's going to mess things up on Pacifica. He's not that type, believe me, said Geordi. If anything, he'll probably be partying with you two. Akusta smiled. She relished her reputation as the party animal of the band. All right, we'll reserve judgment, but he will have to be tested. You won't tip him off, will you? Geordi sighed and shook his head. No, I won't. Even if he told Will, it wouldn't spare him from being the butt of some horrible practical joke. Probably several practical jokes. It was a rookie thing, a long tradition in the band. And he'd better be good, warned Stinson, waving his trumpet case. He stalked off into a gust of wind. Geordi, whispered Akusta, my tom-tom still has a broken lug. I'll get to it tonight, promised the roadie. The statuesque Delton gave him a wink and rushed off to join her comrade. All eyes were on Will Riker as he entered the rehearsal hall, not early but right on time. The tall, dark-haired cadet smiled at everyone, looking quite relaxed. Geordi lowered his wrench from Akusta's tom-tom drum and watched along with everyone else. Akusta leaned over his shoulder and whispered, You didn't tell me he was cute. Geordi squinted through his visor. Well, I wasn't sure. He is, she assured him, and tall for a human. Will made his way gracefully down the risers, through the chairs and music stands, toward the horn section. It was hard to walk gracefully, holding a trombone case. He faltered only when Akusta caught his eye and stood up. Then he nearly tripped. Geordi chuckled and went back to tightening the lug. Now we'll see if he can play with distractions. Keep watching him, whispered Akusta. That was an order, and Geordi looked up to see Stinson smiling at Will and pointing to Lachelle's old chair. The Tellarite had needed his space, and there was no one crowding the one-person trombone section. Will smiled confidently at Stinson and nodded to a few of the others. Everyone was watching him now, and he knew it. He sunk his slim frame into the chair and hoisted the trombone case upon his lap. The chair suddenly cracked into pieces and dumped Will on the floor. The cadet groaned, with the air knocked out of him. There was raucous laughter at his expense. That will teach the rookie to be late, said Akusta with satisfaction. Looking terribly concerned, Stinson rushed to pick Will up from the wreckage of the chair. You all right, friend? Hey, Lachelle was a big guy. He must have weakened that chair. Will gasped a few times and finally brushed Stinson's hands away. Where can I get another chair? He demanded. Stinson looked around the hall and shook his head sadly. Aw, that's too bad. They're all taken. You'll have to go down the corridor to the auditorium. Geordi stood up. You can have mine. Will waved to him, but he wasn't smiling anymore. Geordi gave up his own chair for the newest band member. After that entrance, introductions were hardly necessary, but when Captain Webb and Commander Baxter showed up, they insisted upon introducing Cadet Riker to his fellow band members. Will didn't smile. He just nodded and sat down quickly. There was one good thing about the trick with the broken chair, thought Geordi. It made Will Riker a little less cocky. Captain Ulysses Webb was a portly sort, a chemistry teacher when he wasn't conducting the band. The Starfleet Academy band was his baby, and he came from a long tradition of dedicated band directors. Still, Webb was patient and realized that he was directing young people, not professional musicians. If a cadet had trouble with a number, Webb would be likely to rewrite the part or drop the number rather than embarrass the player. When discipline was needed, he would turn Amelia Baxter loose on them. Discipline was seldom a problem. Rehearsal went very well. Will Riker not only played well, but he sight-read well. He broke off a few times when he lost his way, but he always got himself back on track. Webb stopped the band a few times, but it was never Will's fault alone. When it was all over, Captain Webb thanked Will personally, which brought a brief smile to the cadet's sullen face. "Are there any suggestions you would like to make?" asked Webb. Will punched up the chart on the screen of his music stand. "This song here, I think I could play the solo on Stardust." There's a loud gasp, and everyone gaped at Will Riker. Even Commander Baxter's mouth hung open. Geordi rolled his eyes under his visor. "In your dreams," growled Stinson. "Yeah!" came a chorus of agreement. Captain Webb held up his hands to quiet the murmurs. "Mr. Riker, Stardust is our signature tune. We play it to close every concert. The band selects a soloist in a secret vote. It's a tradition, hundreds of years old." "He's new, sir," piped Geordi, who never spoke up in rehearsal before now. All eyes turned to him as he explained. "He doesn't know about Stardust or the other stuff. Give him a break. He's stepping in on short notice." "Yes, let's forget it," said Captain Webb jovially. "Mr. Riker will have plenty of time to learn our traditions on the trip to Pacifica." "I'm not sure I want to," muttered Will. Captain Webb didn't hear him, but Geordi did. With a flourish of his baton, Webb announced, "Band dismissed." While the others filed out, talking excitedly about Pacifica, Will Riker swabbed the spit out of his mouthpiece. His sullen expression scared away a few people who looked as if they wanted to talk to him. After a few minutes, he was the only one left in the room except for the roadies. Geordi took a deep breath and walked over to the trombonist. "Great playing." "Yeah, sure, nobody appreciated it." He snapped open his case. "I just don't fit in here. It was a mistake." "Listen, they're rough on everybody," said Geordi. "You're only a first-year cadet. You've got to take it. The thing you can't afford is to lose your temper." "What did I do to them?" asked Will angrily. "I thought that in a jazz band there would be some camaraderie. It's just more dumping on rookies." Geordi shrugged. "Starfleet Academy isn't supposed to be easy. Getting used to upper-class cadets is sort of like getting used to the officers aboard ship. Who will outrank us? We'll have to take orders from people we don't know, people we may not even like. That's discipline." Will gave him a curious look. "You talk as if you've been in Starfleet for years, but you're only a rookie too." "I was raised in Starfleet," said Geordi. "Both my parents were in it, and I tagged along to their different posts. I guess I've seen how it works, so I know it does work." Will Riker gazed down at his trombone. "I could have been raised in Starfleet, going from post to post, but my father liked his freedom too much, so he left me at home." "Where's home?" asked Geordi. "Alaska. I miss it." Will put his trombone in its case, snapped it shut, and stood up. "I don't think I can put up with a lot of broken chairs and weird traditions." "The tradition with Stardust isn't weird," answered Geordi. "You'll see. Besides, you can't quit the band until after we go to Pacifica." That got a smile out of the tall trombonist. "Yeah, I suppose I can't. I'll keep thinking about that during rehearsals. By the way, my horn sounds great since you fixed that bell lock." "Happy to be of service." "See you tomorrow." Will grabbed his jacket and stalked out the door. He still looked angry about the broken chair. "Cadet Riker isn't perfect after all," thought Geordi. "He has a temper." He had better learn to curb that temper if he wanted to make it in Starfleet.